Portrait of a school trip in 1911, but an invisible person was captured in the photo. What if I told you that a simple school photograph from 1911 contains one of the most perplexing mysteries in American photographic history? Today, we're diving into a story that has baffled experts for decades. A cheerful class photo that revealed something impossible when examined closely. Something that shouldn't exist, yet undeniably does. If you're already enjoying this type of mysterious content, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps support the channel. And before we begin, I wanted to mention that I'm developing another channel dedicated to unexplained mysteries from American history. If you love stories like this one, you'll definitely want to check it out. The link is in the description below. Now, imagine a sunny spring day in 1911. A group of students on a school picnic, smiling for the camera, creating what should have been an innocent memory. But sometimes, photographs capture more than we intend. Sometimes, they reveal things that challenge everything we think we know about reality. This is one of those photographs. The story begins in the spring of 1982 in the dusty archives of the Pemberton County Historical Society in rural Pennsylvania. Volunteer archivist Janet Morrison was sorting through boxes of donated photographs when she came across a collection from the old Willow Creek Elementary School, which had closed its doors in 1955. Among the yellowed images was a photograph labeled Fifth Grade Class Picnic, May 15, 1911. The sepia-toned image showed 23 children arranged in 3 rows on a grassy hillside, their teacher, Miss Catherine Hartley, standing proudly to the left. Behind them, the rolling hills of Pennsylvania stretched into the distance, dotted with the white blooms of dogwood trees. It was a charming glimpse into the past. Boys in knickers and suspenders, girls in white pinafores with their hair in neat braids. Some children were caught mid-laugh, others maintained serious expressions for the camera. Nothing seemed unusual about it at first glance. Janet was preparing to catalogue the photograph when she noticed something odd. In the second row, between a boy identified as Thomas Garrett and a girl named Eleanor Swift, there seemed to be a distortion in the image. Not damage or deterioration, something else. It was as if the space between the two children was somehow occupied, despite appearing empty. Intrigued, Janet brought the photograph to the Historical Society's new magnifying equipment recently donated by a local university. Under 5x magnification, what she saw made her hands tremble. There in the space between Thomas and Eleanor was the faint but unmistakable outline of another child. But this wasn't a double exposure or a photographic error. The figure was translucent, barely visible, yet undeniably present. You could see through it to the hillside beyond, but its features were discernible. A child of perhaps 10 or 11 years old, wearing what appeared to be the same style of clothing as the other students, standing in the same posed position. What made the discovery even more unsettling was the figure's face. While faint, it was clear enough to show an expression of profound sadness in stark contrast to the cheerful faces of the visible children around it. Janet immediately contacted Dr. Robert Henley, a photography expert from the University of Pittsburgh. His initial assumption was that this was a case of movement during the long exposure time required by 1911 camera technology. A child had simply moved during the photograph, creating a ghostly afterimage. But when Dr. Henley examined the original glass plate negative, his certainty evaporated. The invisible child showed no signs of motion blur. Every other element in the photograph was sharp and clear, including the leaves on the trees in the background. If a child had moved, only they would show motion blur, not this translucent, stationary figure. More puzzling still, the transparent figure cast no shadow, while every visible child in the photograph had a clearly defined shadow consistent with the afternoon sun. It was as if the figure existed in the same space, but not quite in the same reality as everyone else. If you're finding this as intriguing as I am, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Dr. Henley's report was cautious but compelling. The figure present in the Willow Creek photograph defies conventional photographic explanation. It appears to be simultaneously present and absent, captured by the photographic process, but not fully manifested in the physical space at the time of exposure. The discovery prompted a search through the Historical Society's records for information about the 1911 fifth grade class. The initial findings seemed routine: class rolls, grade reports, attendance records, but as Janet dug deeper, inconsistencies began to emerge. The official class roster for May 1911 listed 23 students, matching the number of visible children in the photograph, but several documents from earlier in the school year referenced 24 students. Somewhere between September 1910 and May 1911, one student had seemingly vanished from the records. Even more mysterious, when Janet tried to locate the spot where the photograph was taken, she discovered that the hillside visible in the image had been the site of a tragedy just months before the photo was captured. In February 1911, a child had drowned in the creek at the bottom of that very hill during an unseasonably warm day when the ice gave way. The child's name, according to newspaper records, was Margaret Donnelly. She had been 10 years old and a student at Willow Creek Elementary. Yet her name appeared on no class rosters after February 1911, and there was no mention of her in any school records following her death. It was as if the school had collectively chosen to forget she had ever existed. The mystery of the transparent figure deepened as researchers delved into the history of Willow Creek Elementary and the tragic circumstances surrounding Margaret Donnelly's death. What they uncovered was a story of grief, guilt, and possibly something far stranger. Local newspaper archives revealed that Margaret's drowning had occurred during a school outing, not unlike the picnic where the mysterious photograph was taken. On February 18, 1911, Miss Hartley had taken her class to the creek for a nature study lesson. The winter had been harsh, and the children were warned to stay away from the ice-covered water. According to witness accounts from the time, Margaret had been trying to retrieve a classmate's hat that had blown onto the ice. The ice gave way, and despite the frantic efforts of Miss Hartley and several older students, Margaret couldn't be saved. Her body was recovered 2 days later, 3 miles downstream. The tragedy had devastated the small community. The school was closed for a week, and when it reopened, there was no mention of Margaret in any official capacity. It was a different time, when grief was often handled through silence and forgetting rather than processing and remembrance. Dr. Emily Patterson, a historian specializing in early 20th century education practices, was brought in to provide context. The absence of Margaret from records after her death isn't unusual for the period, she explained. Schools often dealt with student deaths by simply removing all traces of the child, believing it would help the other students move forward. But this didn't explain the figure in the photograph taken 3 months after Margaret's death. The research team decided to track down descendants of the students in the photograph. This proved challenging. Over 70 years had passed, and many families had moved away or died out. But they did manage to locate Sarah Webb, the 89-year-old daughter of Eleanor Swift, the girl who had stood next to the transparent figure. Sarah's testimony was remarkable. Her mother, who had lived to be 94, had often spoken about her school days at Willow Creek. But there was one story she only told in her final years, when dementia had begun to loosen her grip on the careful boundaries between what should and shouldn't be said. Mother claimed that after Margaret died, strange things happened at school, Sarah recounted. She said Margaret was still there, that they could sometimes see her sitting at her old desk or standing in the playground. But the teachers would get angry if anyone mentioned it. According to Eleanor's deathbed recollections, the day of the picnic photograph was particularly unsettling. Several students claimed to feel Margaret's presence very strongly. Thomas Garrett, the boy who stood on the other side of the transparent figure, had whispered to Eleanor that he felt someone standing between them when the photographer was setting up his camera. "Mother said she felt it too," Sarah continued. "A cold spot, even though it was a warm May day. And a feeling of terrible sadness. She said when the photographer told them to smile, she heard someone crying, but there was no one there. Leave a comment about what you think really happened that day." The research team also discovered that Miss Catherine Hartley had left teaching abruptly at the end of the 1911 school year. She moved to California and never taught again, working instead as a seamstress until her death in 1953. Among her effects, relatives found a journal with several pages torn out, pages that, according to the intact entries around them, would have covered February to May of 1911. One surviving entry, dated May 20th, 1911, 5 days after the picnic photograph, was particularly intriguing. "I cannot continue this pretense. The children know, though we tell them not to speak of it. How can I teach them to seek truth in their studies when I daily demand they deny what their own eyes show them? She is there. We all know she is there. May God forgive us for our cowardice." Further investigation revealed that the Willow Creek area had a long history of unusual occurrences. Native American oral traditions spoke of it as a place where the veil was thin, where the boundaries between the world of the living and the realm of spirits were not as fixed as elsewhere. 3 families who had lived near the school in the early 1900s had moved away suddenly, all citing disturbances that made them uncomfortable. The school itself had been built on land that local Native American tribes had warned settlers against developing, though these warnings were dismissed as superstition at the time. The photographer who took the 1911 picture was identified as Marcus Johansson, a traveling photographer who made his living taking school and family portraits throughout Pennsylvania. His business ledger, discovered in an antique shop in 2003, contained a curious note next to the Willow Creek Elementary entry. "All 24 paid, only 23 visible, will not return." As news of the Willow Creek photograph spread through academic circles in the 1980s, it attracted the attention of scientists and researchers from various fields. The photograph became one of the most analyzed images in paranormal research history, subjected to every test imaginable to either explain or debunk the transparent figure. Dr. Alan Cromwell from the Kodak Research Laboratories was given unprecedented access to the original glass plate negative in 1984. His team's analysis using electron microscopy and chemical spectroscopy revealed several anomalies that defied conventional explanation. The area containing the transparent figure shows a different crystalline structure in the silver halide emulsion, Dr. Cromwell reported. "It's as if that portion of the negative was exposed to a different quality of light, or perhaps to something that only partially interacted with the photographic medium." The team also discovered that the transparent figure appeared to have been captured at a slightly different focal plane than the rest of the image. While all the visible children and the background were in sharp focus, the transparent figure showed characteristics of being both nearer and farther from the camera simultaneously, a physical impossibility with 1911 camera technology. Computer enhancement techniques new at the time revealed even more disturbing details. The transparent figure's clothing showed period-accurate details down to the button patterns and fabric texture. The face, when enhanced, clearly showed a young girl with distinctive features, a small scar above the left eyebrow, a slightly crooked front tooth visible in her sorrowful expression. These details match perfectly with the discovered photograph of Margaret Donnelly taken at Christmas 1910, just 2 months before her death. The scar, family members confirmed, had come from a fall when she was 5. The crooked tooth was a family trait, shared by her mother and grandmother. But how could such precise details appear in a photograph taken months after Margaret's death? Dr. Patricia Helms, a quantum physicist from Princeton, proposed a radical theory. She suggested that under certain conditions, specific electromagnetic fields, geological formations, and perhaps emotional trauma, imprints of past events could occasionally bleed through into the present, captured by the chemical processes of early photography. We're not talking about ghosts in the traditional sense, Dr. Helms explained. Rather, we might be looking at a quantum echo, a moment where past and present temporarily occupy the same space, visible to the camera's objective eye, even if not to human perception at the time. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the mystery, please give the video a like and subscribe for more investigations into the unexplained. This theory gained some support when geological surveys of the Willow Creek area revealed unusual magnetic properties in the underlying rock formations. The hillside, where the photograph was taken, sat directly above a convergence of underground streams and mineral deposits that created localized electromagnetic anomalies. Similar conditions had been documented at other sites of reported paranormal photography, though none with the clarity and detail of the Willow Creek image. Skeptics, however, pointed to the possibility of an elaborate hoax. Dr. Michael Roberts, a prominent debunker of paranormal claims, spent 6 months attempting to recreate the effect using period-appropriate techniques. He tried double exposures, glass plate manipulation, chemical treatments, and even early composite photography methods. His conclusion was frustrating for skeptics. While I remain convinced there must be a rational explanation, I have been unable to reproduce the effect seen in the Willow Creek photograph using any technique available in 1911. If this is a hoax, it represents a level of sophistication that seems unlikely for a small-town school photograph. The photograph underwent additional testing in 1987 at the FBI's forensic laboratory, though the reasons for federal interest in the case remain classified. The portions of their report that were released confirmed the authenticity of the glass plate negative and the impossibility of recreating the effect with known photographic techniques. One detail from the FBI analysis stood out. The transparent figure appeared to be illuminated by a light source that didn't match the sunlight in the rest of the photograph. While all visible subjects were lit from the upper right, consistent with afternoon sun, the transparent figure showed subtle highlighting from directly above, as if lit by a different sun or from a different time of day. As technology advanced into the 21st century, new tools and techniques provided fresh insights into the Willow Creek photograph, though each discovery seemed to deepen rather than solve the mystery. In 2008, the photograph underwent analysis using hyperspectral imaging at the Smithsonian Institution. This technology, originally developed for satellite reconnaissance, could detect minute variations in light wavelengths far beyond human perception. The results were extraordinary. Dr. Lisa Chen, who led the analysis, discovered that the transparent figure existed in wavelengths slightly shifted from the rest of the image. It's as if we're looking at two photographs superimposed, but taken under different spectral conditions, she explained. The visible children reflect light normally across all wavelengths. The transparent figure shows a consistent shift of approximately 30 nanometers across the entire spectrum. This spectral shift corresponded to no known photographic phenomenon or defect. Some researchers suggested it might indicate the figure existed in a slightly different dimensional phase, visible to the camera but not entirely present in our reality. In 2012, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Marcus Johansson's great-granddaughter discovered a trunk in her attic containing his personal effects, including a private journal he kept separate from his business ledger. The entry for May 15, 1911 was revealing: Willow Creek Elementary, most disturbing experience of my career. As I prepared the shot, I counted 23 children. I arranged them carefully, checked my frame. When I looked through the camera, I saw 24. A girl stood between two students in the second row. I could see her clearly through the ground glass, though she appeared somewhat faint. I assumed my eyes were playing tricks. I asked if all the children were in position. The teacher confirmed 23 were present and accounted for. I looked again, still 24 through the camera. The extra child never moved, never blinked. She stared not at the camera but through it, as if looking at something beyond. I took the photograph. When developed, she was there, just as I had seen her. I showed no one. I fear I captured something that was not meant to be captured. This testimony confirmed that the figure was visible through the camera at the time of photography, not added later through any darkroom process. The Willow Creek Elementary building, abandoned since 1955, became a site of scientific interest. In 2015, a team of researchers conducted extensive testing using modern equipment. They discovered that the electromagnetic anomalies in the area followed a pattern, intensifying around the anniversary of Margaret's death, and again around the date the photograph was taken. During one such peak in May 2016, exactly 105 years after the original photograph, the team attempted to recreate the shot using both period-accurate equipment and modern digital cameras. The results were unsettling. While modern digital cameras showed nothing unusual, a replica 1911 view camera captured several anomalous images. Shadows where no one stood, light distortions in the exact spot where Margaret had appeared in the original photo. Dr. James Morrison, a specialist in consciousness studies, proposed that traumatic events might create what he called temporal scars, points where intense emotion or tragedy weakens the barriers between past and present. The combination of Margaret's traumatic death, the guilt of her classmates and teacher, and the unique properties of the location might have created conditions where the past could bleed through. But this theory couldn't explain one disturbing detail discovered in 2018. Advanced facial recognition software, applied to both the transparent figure and the Christmas photo of Margaret Donnelly, revealed something impossible. The transparent figure appeared to be approximately 6 months older than Margaret had been at her death. Her face showed subtle but measurable differences in bone structure consistent with normal growth that could not have occurred after death. Today, the Willow Creek photograph remains one of the most studied and debated images in the history of anomalous photography. Despite decades of analysis using increasingly sophisticated technology, no one has been able to provide a definitive explanation for the transparent figure of Margaret Donnelly. In 2020, a team of international researchers launched the most comprehensive study to date, combining every previous analysis with new techniques from fields as diverse as quantum mechanics, consciousness research, and advanced imaging technology. Their 200-page report concluded with an admission of failure. The anomaly present in the Willow Creek photograph remains unexplained by current scientific understanding. What makes this case particularly compelling is the convergence of evidence from multiple sources. The photograph itself, with its inexplicable transparent figure, the testimony of students who felt a presence, the photographer who saw the extra child through his camera, the teacher's guilt-ridden journal entries, the geological anomalies of the location. Each piece of evidence supports the others, creating a puzzle that refuses to be dismissed as coincidence or hoax. Dr. Sarah Peterson, who has studied the photograph for over 20 years, offers this perspective. We're faced with 3 possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Either this is the most elaborate and technically advanced hoax of the early 20th century, executed for no discernible reason, or we're looking at a natural phenomenon we don't yet understand, one that challenges our basic assumptions about the nature of time and reality. Or we must consider that consciousness itself, particularly consciousness affected by trauma, might interact with the physical world in ways we're only beginning to glimpse. The families of the visible children in the photograph have their own interpretations. Many descendants report that their ancestors rarely spoke of their school days, and when they did, they often mentioned feeling watched or accompanied by an unseen presence. Thomas Garrett's grandson revealed that his grandfather, even in his 90s, would grow quiet when asked about elementary school, saying only, "Margaret never left." Modern investigators have noted another curious detail. In every attempt to digitally remove or obscure the transparent figure from reproductions of the photograph, the image corrupts or distorts in unexpected ways. It's as if the figure is integral to the photograph's structure, impossible to separate from the whole. The location itself continues to exhibit unusual properties. The hillside where the photograph was taken is now part of a state park, and rangers report that visitors often feel unexpectedly emotional in that specific spot. Some claim to hear children laughing or crying when no one is around. Electronic devices frequently malfunction there, and several photographers have reported capturing unexplained anomalies in their images. Leave a comment about your thoughts on this enduring mystery. In 2023, the last surviving person with a direct connection to the events died. Mary Hutchinson, who had been 3 years old in 1911 and the younger sister of one of the students, passed away at 1:15. In her final interview, she revealed one last detail. "My brother William was in that photograph. He never forgot that day. He said they all knew Margaret was there with them. He said she looked so sad because she couldn't join in their games anymore, could only watch. He visited her grave every year until he died, telling her about their classmates, keeping her memory alive. He believed that's why she appeared in the photograph, to remind them not to forget." The Willow Creek photograph forces us to confront questions that have no easy answers. What is the nature of consciousness? Can traumatic events leave traces that transcend our understanding of time? Are there places where the boundaries between past and present, between life and death, become permeable? Science has given us tools to examine the photograph in extraordinary detail, to confirm its authenticity, to rule out conventional explanations. But it hasn't given us the ability to explain what we're seeing. The transparent figure of Margaret Donnelly remains as mysterious today as when Janet Morrison first noticed it in 1982. Perhaps that's the most important lesson of the Willow Creek photograph. Despite our technological advances and scientific understanding, there remain mysteries that challenge our fundamental assumptions about reality. The image stands as a reminder that the universe may be far stranger and more complex than we dare to imagine. The photograph now resides in a climate-controlled vault, available for study but protected from the degradation of time. Margaret Donnelly's transparent figure remains frozen in that moment from 1911, standing between her classmates, present and absent simultaneously, a puzzle that may never be solved. What happened on that hillside in Pennsylvania? How did a camera capture something that shouldn't exist? Why does Margaret appear older than she was at death? These questions remain unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. The Willow Creek photograph endures as one of history's most compelling mysteries, a window into the unknown that refuses to close. The mystery of the Willow Creek photograph continues to captivate and perplex us over a century after it was taken. Despite every advancement in technology and analysis, Margaret Donnelly's transparent figure remains unexplained, challenging our understanding of what's possible. If you found this investigation as fascinating as I did, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think explains the transparent figure? Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? Do you know of other mysterious photographs that deserve investigation? And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please take a moment to do so and hit that notification bell. I publish new mysteries from history every week, and your support helps me continue researching and sharing these incredible true stories that challenge our understanding of reality. Don't forget to check out my other channel, focusing on historical mysteries. The link is in the description. Next week, we'll be exploring another photograph that shouldn't exist, this time from a 1920s expedition that encountered something impossible in the Amazon rainforest. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of photography's most enduring enigmas. Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, sometimes a simple school photograph can open doorways to mysteries that may never be solved. What secrets might be hiding in your own family albums, waiting to be discovered?